Chapter 3, The Day of Sabbath. At the end of every week, on the morning of the Sabbath, the entire clan would assemble in the center of the village as one of the elders, usually Isaac, Jonah, or even Zechariah himself, would lead the clan in a weekly Bible service. This week a special service had been planned, and all the families were required to attend, since Zechariah had already announced that he would lead the service this morning. As was usual, everyone would gather for a time of food and drinks prior to the service, and everyone would spend the time catching up on all the events of the prior week. The entire village was intentionally arranged to make these gatherings as convenient as possible to all families. The village was designed like the spokes and rims of a large wheel, with the center of the village being the hub and each of the spokes being short trails leading to the individual camps of each of the families. At the center of the village were several large tents and some semi-permanent buildings which were built to house the many supplies and other necessities that all families shared. This had been a typical design used by many of the clans to provide not only the needed privacy for each of the dozens of families, but it also provided for the safety of their resources from the occasional pillagers and thieves they might encounter in their travels. On the weekly gatherings for Sabbath, most of the younger children would busy themselves playing games on the fringe areas near the center of the village, and special designated play areas monitored by some of the older children, while the men and the older boys would stand around and talk of all the work that they had done, or the work that still needed to be attended to in the days ahead. Some of the older women would watch the children play, while others would stand around sharing new recipes or showing off some new article of clothing that had been sewn in the past week. The morning was chilly, considering it was the middle of April. The skies had been mostly cloudy, as beams of sunlight cascaded through the cloud openings above, joined together with a brisk cool southwestern breeze. Caleb could smell it in the air. Rain was on the way. Caleb had decided to stand and mingle with the older boys this morning, rather than play games with the other kids who were all busying themselves playing stickball in one of the clearings next to the assembly area. After all, Caleb was beginning to feel more adult these days, since he recently celebrated his 16th birthday. He was amused at how the older boys always liked to boast and brag about how much work they had done every week. If they only knew, he thought. Several times Caleb was nearly tempted to jump into the middle of their conversations and boast about how he, his father, and brother Stephen had plowed and planted 4 acres of corn, squash, or potatoes this week. However, Caleb suddenly found himself distracted by the sight of Martha Elgin walking behind her mother Rebecca. Martha was helping her mother prepare the platform for her grandfather Zechariah's special message this morning. Martha was a season younger than Caleb, but not quite as tall, with long golden hair pulled back and neatly braided behind her head. Caleb remembered when they were children that they used to play together during the weekly gatherings and the games that all the children played. Now lately, for some strange reason that Caleb couldn't quite yet understand, he felt much differently towards Martha. Whenever he made eye contact with her, he would just smile meekly back at her, feeling nervous inside as his heart began to pound and thrust inside his chest. He found that could only stare at her for a moment or two, then he would have to look away suddenly or find something else to do to look busy. Even though he really wasn't busy, he just couldn't handle these new feelings, and sometimes they got the best of him. As he watched Martha setting up the platform with her mother, she turned for a second and both their eyes met as Caleb quickly looked away. He turned his head again to look at Martha and their eyes met once more. Martha smiled at him, and Caleb turned his attention back to the older boys who were still busily chatting away. Caleb then looked back to see her still staring at him before Martha turned around, running quickly to catch up with her mother who was waiting for her near the supply tent. "Caleb, you all right?" asked Peter Rickton, poking Caleb's shoulder to get his attention. Peter, who was about the same age as Caleb, was nearly 2 inches shorter than Caleb and had apple-red hair with a fair freckled face. He had been playing stickball until the other team won the game and he decided he was bored and it was time to do something else before the service started. The Rickton family, along with about a dozen other families, had long been a part of the clan. Even though they weren't blood relatives, they were still considered part of the clan. Sarah had told him that many of these families had known each other long before the Great Cataclysm. What? Oh yeah, "I'm fine, Peter," answered Caleb, who was busy carefully straightening his clothes and hair. "Are you sure? You look like you've seen a ghost." Peter paused, as a laugh started up within him. "Come on, Caleb, it's obvious. You like her, huh?" Peter gestured over to where Martha was standing on the other side of the assembly area, helping her mother set up the food on communion tables. "It's that obvious?" Caleb fought to keep his emotions in check, so as not to let Peter how he really felt for Martha. "Oh yeah, I can't blame you though, she's really changed a lot since we were little kids." Peter turned around and directed Caleb's attention to one of the other girls who was also standing on the opposite side of the clearing, Leslie Marin, who was standing next to older brother Alan. He stared at her for a while, and then turned back to Caleb, lifting his eyebrows slightly. "Let me guess, you like Leslie?" asked Caleb, seeming to act surprised, but not. Peter leaned in close to Caleb and whispered, "I overheard some of the older men talking the other day about running into men from a clan that recently settled nearby. It was along the river a few miles northeast of here, the McNeil clan, they said. They just moved up there a few months ago, and they have nearly as many families as we do, and, get this, I hear they have a lot more girls than boys." Peter winked and nudged Caleb with his elbow. Caleb thought about that. Although it sounded good, there was only one girl he was really interested in, but only if Caleb could get over his fear of Martha's father Elijah. Somehow Caleb felt a sense of disapproval from Martha's father Elijah, even from the time when he and Martha played together as children. Perhaps it was that Caleb's mother was never shy about sharing her pride in her son's visions and would often proudly announce them to the others. This didn't use to bother Caleb very much. That was until some of the other mothers would look at him nervously. He couldn't understand why they seemed nervous though. Not all his visions came true, only just some of them. Caleb recalled the one dream he had when he was about 7. One night he had a dream of children walking through the village during the day and stumbling into a pool of water in the middle of the village and drowning. As it turned out, a month later a terrible storm would hit their camp, tearing up all the tents and ruining much of their supplies. But the worst part, that would come with the sudden appearance of a huge sinkhole amid the camp that nearly swallowed up a couple of the small children as they sank in the water. Since that day, the other mothers within the clan were often weary of Caleb and his visions. His mother began to curtail her public circulation of Caleb's dreams with the others as Caleb got older, partially due to Rebecca Elgin's criticisms of her son's gift, but mostly due to Caleb's hesitancy in sharing all of his visions with his mother. "Hey, it looks like they're getting ready to start. I better get over there with my family," continued Peter, interrupting Caleb's thoughts. "Yeah, you're right. See you around." Caleb turned back to look for Martha by the communion tables, but saw his mother walking towards him instead. "Caleb, we've been looking for you. Come sit with us. Your father wants us all together. He says Elder Zachariah has an important message planned for today that we all must hear," insisted Sarah. Caleb nodded. "I'll be right there, Mother, but first I have to find someone." Sarah gave him a look of surprise, and then a slight grin of understanding came across her face. "Well, be quick about it. It's going to start in a few minutes." She turned to rejoin the others who were beginning to find places to sit. Caleb walked over to the large table that had been arranged for communion in front of the platform. He saw the baskets of fresh-baked bread and pots filled with wine and juice. He could smell the sweetness of the bread as he breathed in deeply and closed his eyes. "Where is she?" he wondered. Caleb saw several of the other families setting up their small wooden stools and chairs in large semicircles in front of the platform, while others were arranging to sit on the wooden benches situated around in the grassy area in front of the main podium. For a moment or two, Caleb was awed by the sight of the entire clan gathered in one place, and suddenly realized just how large the clan had grown over the years since he was a child. Caleb noticed his brother Stephen talking to one of the older boys over by the side of the clearing, and that's when he spotted Martha standing all alone next to the door of the large cooking tent that had been set up near the communion tables. Caleb stepped quickly over to where she was standing to speak with her before she rejoined her family. Finally, thought Caleb, a moment or two alone. Caleb swallowed slightly, taking a deep breath. "Hello, Martha," greeted Caleb meekly. It was the most he could manage to say. He was really hoping for a more impressive introduction. Martha, who was just about to go inside the tent, turned and smiled. "Well, hello, Caleb. Where's your family sitting?" she asked. Caleb gazed at her for what seemed like eternity, carefully taking in the lines of her light brown hair as the wind caught a loose strand or two and blew them into her face, and then her smile, as she reached up with one hand and tossed them aside. Caleb blindly motioned with one hand to an area several yards to the east of the platform, all the while keeping his attention focused on Martha. "Over there." "Where will you be sitting?" Martha pointed to an area off to one side of the podium, where Caleb could see her father busy setting up the platform and chairs to the side of the platform where Elder Zachariah's family was supposed to sit. "Father wants us over there this morning," he said. "Grandpa Zachariah has a very important message for everyone and wants us close by." She looked at Caleb and smiled. Her hazel eyes twinkled slightly as they caught the morning rays of sunlight streaming through the leaves from the surrounding oak and maple trees. "Caleb, are you all right?" she asked. "You're acting really strange this morning." "Thank you, I'm fine. It's just that, it's good to see you," he stuttered, feeling a pit suddenly forming in his stomach. That didn't quite come out as he had hoped it would. "Would you like to sit with us?" asked Martha. Caleb swallowed hard. How much he wanted to say that he would like to, no love to, but he knew that his mother and father would be very upset if he didn't sit with them, and he knew Elijah would probably not allow it anyway. "No thank you, Martha. I suppose today wouldn't be the best day for that, but maybe some other time." "You would be welcome to sit with us as well," he smiled nervously. "Thank you, Caleb. I would like that." She looked at him and then paused, as if in deep thought. "I heard that your father and brother finished planting the north fields this week," she remarked. "We did," answered Caleb proudly. "That's wonderful. I'm sure you worked really hard to get it done so fast." "Well, we had a few of the other men helping us finish it all up in time. Father wanted to get it planted before the rains came, like they did last year," explained Caleb, pausing and gazing up towards the platform where he saw Zachariah walking slowly up the steps. "Looks like your grandfather is about to start. I guess we'd better go." Caleb turned to leave, but felt Martha tug him slightly on the sleeve. "Hey Caleb, we're all planning to get together next week on Wednesday for supper, playing games, and making music at Elder Daniel's camp. Please come and join us if you can. That is, if you're not working, and could you bring your flute too?" Martha asked. "I would like that, but I'll have to see if it's all right with my father first. He said there was still more work to do in the fields this next week." "Great. Well, maybe I'll see you there. Bye." Martha quickly turned and headed into the cooking tent. How Caleb wished there was more time to talk, but that would have to come later, he thought. Caleb turned and quickly walked over to where his family was waiting for him and sat down next to Stephen. Well, look who's here," teased Stephen as Caleb was sitting down. "You and Martha have a lot to talk about, I noticed." Caleb looked quizzically at Stephen and leaned in close to him. "Was it that obvious?" Stephen grinned. "Like Nina and I." Stephen reached around Caleb's shoulders and gave him a gentle pat on the back. "Don't worry, little brother, I promise, I won't say a word." Caleb turned around to see his father returning from where all the other men had been socializing a few minutes before. Caleb slowly sat down next to his mother and the twins as he heard Elijah ringing the bell for the start of the morning sermon.
You have been listening to Caleb Elgin, The Rise of the Clans by David E. Farmer. Also available on Amazon Kindle. More chapters coming soon. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.